Mary Mahoney, and she's my great friend from the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. And Mary and I, we used to give presentations together at conferences, and we had so much fun. She is the best partner. She is also the Senior Assistant Director for the Career Development and Academic Exploration Department. She oversees the day-to-day operations of the on-campus recruiting program, including presenting workshops and counseling on areas related to the job search process. She has presented at numerous workshops on a variety of topics to the university, business organizations, and at conferences. And she has received training in salary negotiation from AAUW. So we're going to go ahead and let Mary start, and then at about 12:15, we'll break for questions. And then also attendees, if you have any questions at all during the presentation, feel free to type that in the chat, because Mary will be keeping her eye on the chat. So Mary, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thanks so much, Alice. Always good to work with you, and we really did have some good fun times. But today we are going to talk with you all about salary negotiation. And I just want to emphasize, first off, salary negotiation is important always, but it's especially important for females. I think we hear so often about the wage gaps, and I'm going to show you that in a moment. But you really just want to think about, as like you're moving into a job or moving up, what you can negotiate for. We're going to say salary, but there are lots of other things in addition to salary. And so these are some of the things that we're going to address in the next roughly 40 to 45 minutes. And so along those lines today, what I want to do is share some statistics with you. I want to try to talk about some ideas that relate to kind of starting your career path or moving on up, and share some resources, and then hopefully just give you some ideas on ways that you can definitely, shall we say, improve your salary negotiation skills. So I wanted to start off by sharing a little bit of data with you. One thing that you want to be aware of is that women make up more than half of the U.S. workforce. And interestingly, this has not changed a lot over the years. We still encounter barriers such as sex discrimination, negative stereotypes, and even at times hostile and unwelcoming environments. And so there's just a lot of challenges out there that we just need to think about as we are in the workforce. One of the things I want you to notice here, it's got 1970s, women were paid 58% compared to men. I mean, that's just really upsetting. You look at 2020, and women are being paid 82%. So, okay, we're making strides, but still, this is not where it should be. It really should totally be equal pay for all, definitely if you are doing the same job. And then I thought I would just share a couple of locations just to show you across the country. The smallest pay gap is like 9 cents in Vermont, goes all the way up to 35 cents in Wyoming, and Tennessee is right there in with the national average at 20 cents. So just to kind of give you some ideas. One thing I will say, the gap has decreased. This is due to women's progress in education and the things they're doing in workforce participation. And men's wage rate has slowed, but again, still a lot to go. One thing also to be aware of is women do often work in jobs that tend to pay less. The education field, social work, helping positions. One thing that is interesting when I say the education field, and for right now, for the moment, I'm going to say higher ed, because when you're often in teaching positions at the primary and secondary levels, the pay is equal. Really does come in, whether it's male or female, the pay overall is equal. It can vary based on someone's experience. But again, there are a few fields out there where the pay is equally balanced. I want to address one other thing. Progress on the pay gap has stalled somewhat over the last few years, and COVID didn't do us any favors. It has definitely put some of the forward progress on hold. It has especially impacted low-skilled women and minorities the most. And so again, there are going to be challenges trying to, shall we say, regain some of the strides that we were making. Women do always tend to experience the greater job losses, and part of that is because we tend to work in the service areas. And I don't know about many of you, but over the past year, I know that a number of people had to adjust their work schedule or even temporarily drop out because they had to take care of children who were home, who were doing virtual schooling. And so many times we're just impacted by things that to a point are beyond our control. And so again, those are times that we want to really push our government to, shall we say, help with things like childcare and just ways so that it can be a more equal balance for everyone. And I mean, that's just the thing we want to think about, is a good work-life balance that would work for everyone. One other thing I want to share with you, this is not on the screen, but the average salary for males in the state of Tennessee, this again is average, is $63,562. And for females, it is $46,943. Those were rankings from 2019. To also just share a little bit of information, because I have just been focusing, I'm going to say, on women in general. I wanted you to see this screen that is a gender pay gap across ethnicities. And again, we face challenges, but others face many more challenges. And I will stress to you, we all need to work together so that every female has got the best opportunity possible. So I just wanted to share that information with you. So one of the things that you want to think about as we start getting into salary negotiation is, don't look at it as a negative or, oh, this is hard, I can't do it. Realize that we are involved in some form of negotiation pretty much every day. We may not think about things being negotiation, but we are. Whether it's trying to connect with people on a project and negotiate for who's going to do what, that's a form of how you are persuasive, how you present your information. And so you really want to think about embracing a mindset of how can you negotiate and how can you negotiate for what you're worth. And so you really want to think about it. From a survey of over 2,800 hiring managers, over 70% expect to negotiate. So in other words, if you're interviewing for a job, you're almost expected to negotiate. That doesn't mean you're going to get maybe the salary you want, but there is that expectation that you will be talking with them and you will be presenting information. So we want you to be prepared. And those are some things I want to talk about that's on this slide here. So if you're starting out on your career path, let's just say you're moving into your first job or one of your early career paths, make sure that you have done your research. Do not wait until you're sitting there in the interview and they're kind of making an offer and saying a salary. The minute you start thinking about looking for a job or looking to make a career change or just even look for another position, you need to do research. You know, what are the positions that you're interested in? So what is the position? What skills does it entail? What educational background? What experience do you need? Is it entry level? Does it need a couple of years experience? Is it more? Is it looking for certain, shall we say, majors or skill sets? And so again, you need to sit down and really find what I call your market value. And always consider geographic location. We know that in general, in the state of Tennessee, our cost of living, I'm going to say, is low, but even within our state, from Knoxville to Nashville to Memphis, the cost of living is different. And so that very much can impact you. And then even thinking about relocating outside the state of Tennessee, maybe to Los Angeles or New York City or something like that. So again, do your research and know this information as you start really, shall we say, looking for your job and really pursuing that career path. So again, focus on knowing the positions you're interested in. Obviously, what do they pay? What education do they require? What experiences? And of course, where are they going to be located? Excuse me. When you think about, and you may not think about this, but what's your financial impact on the organization? It says, will you generate revenue or cost them? This can vary on your positions. For many of us who are in higher education, you might think, well, I don't generate revenue, but in a way we do, again, depending on our roles. I work in a career center, as Alice mentioned. We are quite often contacted or visited by parents who are doing their visits to see what is our school like, what do we offer, do they want their son or daughter coming? And if we're showing them success rates, we're friendly, we're open to them, and they're like, you know what, I'm going to go to UT. We've impacted revenue that the university will make. So I'm not costing my university money, I'm helping them make money. And so again, you have to think about what is your impact. And it's not bad at times to think about costing them, because there's always going to be jobs you're in that you have to do things that will generate a cost, but what is the overall result of what you're doing? So just think about that, and just think, if maybe thinking about the money worries you, just think, what is my impact? How can I impact this organization? How can I help them? So those are some things that you want to really kind of get in the back of your mind. As we get into thinking about, for a moment, let's talk about someone who's moving up in your career path. So you're currently in a good position, but you want to move up either within the office you're in, higher title, more responsibility. Maybe you're wanting to move up at the university or whatever organization you're in. Same thing. We're going to come back here for a minute to, well, what has been your financial impact? And so again, think about it. It's kind of more like the second bullet. How have you impacted the organization? What have you done for them? What have you brought to them? How have you increased visibility of maybe that office, of what they do? What are even your interactions with people, the relationships that you have developed in your position, but again, for that office that you're working in? And then just even thinking, how can you impact? How can you impact where you are, but how can you impact at that next level, that next position? And so again, I think many times we don't sit back and think about how we are impacting, within our office. I think we're so often taught to just kind of be more modest and humble. And again, you don't want to be kind of bragging and cocky, but you've truly got to think, what is the impact that you are having on an organization? And so it's time to kind of create what I call your brag list. You want to think about it, and you want to jot these things down, because these are going to become conversation points when you're meeting and when you're negotiating for that additional money or those additional responsibilities. One of the things I also want to mention with individuals wanting to move up, choose a time to meet to discuss salary. If like you're in a current office and you're wanting to try to get more money, don't just go popping in the office one day. And for example, I'll say, hey, Alice, I want to sit down. I want to talk to you about getting a raise. Okay, she's not prepared. I've kind of hit her very unawares, and I probably haven't thought through my things. Think about a time to discuss it. Think about requesting a meeting, and you don't necessarily have to say what that meeting's about. You want to sit down and you want to talk with a person. Maybe you say, I want to talk about my career path. Kind of keep it more general. But that also lets them start thinking about things. Also, think about a time to request a meeting after you've ended a project and it's gone really well and you've been recognized for it. So already right there, you've got something to show and to talk about. If you know that there is a performance review coming up, typically schedule a meeting about, I'm going to say as little as 30 days, could be 90. I'm going to go with the sweet spot of 30 to 60 days before that review, because you're setting in place now, we're going to have this review, but I want to be talking about, some salary changes, some responsibility changes. And so now you are truly planting that seed, sitting down, having a discussion. Then they have time to think about it and do research before the performance review. But also keep in mind that as you are negotiating for these things, how much stress are you willing to take or to take on? And the reason I say it that way is so many times we're like, oh, I want that job, or I want to take on that. And we may not have always thought it through. So you just need to think about more responsibility can often cause more stress. Are you ready for that? Because again, that's something you need to think about and you need to consider as you prepare. So when we now start to think about negotiation for women, you really want to think again about what are those skills that you bring? Just like we talked about earlier, what skills, what experiences, your strengths, what is it you're bringing to the job, to the organization? And be positive, really think, what are those things I do? What are good? And just like I said, create a brag sheet. One of the things that I would say is don't just sit down today and okay, I'm going to write down all the good things I've done, the projects I've worked on, how I've been recognized, maybe what I've done for the office, and then kind of just lay it to the side and go, okay, I've got my brag sheet. I'm ready to go in and talk. Give yourself time. Again, plan for this. And again, even if you're just starting out your career path, you can make your brag sheet on things that you did in college, in the previous experiences. But what I guess I'm trying to get at here is take time, because you want to jot down things, because if you do it right now, some things will come to you. They may come to you while we're doing this presentation. Jot them down. But then give yourself at least a few days to think about it. I don't know about you all, but I'm one. I could be driving somewhere and all of a sudden I just start getting these ideas, or I'm working outside. And so I need to go and I need to jot those down, because then I'm creating this list that I can go back, go through, and now start to prioritize. What are the key things I want to emphasize, I want to mention, I want to talk about, and I can back up. And so again, take the time to do it. I would even encourage you, I'm going to say it this way with our computers nowadays, create you a Google Doc or an Excel spreadsheet and just routinely look at it and add to it. You might even want to list presentations you've made, potentially even conferences you've attended, if you've written anything, if you've been published, responsibilities within your job where you oversee or you manage. It's the easiest thing in the world if you've just got this doc that you can just kind of go to and jot down things, to then be able to go back and look over it and pull out those key issues. So again, think about these things in creating. Also, we tend to focus on the skills that we have developed within our job, but realize we're developing skills whatever we are doing. And so what I mean is, if you volunteer, think about the skills you're using there. You may do something in your church. You may have a responsibility within this organization. Pull from everything. Obviously, your focus is going to be on the job related, but you think about these other skills that you can bring, shall we say, to the table. So really think about that. Try to think about what sets you apart. Even from who all's on the call today or the Zoom meeting, let's just say, you might look and see who are some of the names and think, nice people, don't get mean about this, but what sets me apart from that person? What skill do I have? And that's not being mean. It's letting you start to think, well, they're good at that, but I can do this. So I need to emphasize this skill. And so always, again, kind of what makes you special, what sets you apart. Why would you be the person that an organization is going to hire or promote? And then do keep in mind, as you go along, obviously, you will be picking up more experience, and more experience, no matter what, does give you, in most cases, more bargaining power, just because you have more things to rely on and to talk about. And I love this statement on here that was from someone who did one of the Work Smart workshops. I wish I didn't have to fight for my worth. Wouldn't that be wonderful if we all just got paid what we truly are worth? But then on the other hand, I think it's important that we do think about what are we worth, and that we present that so that we really are, maybe fighting is the strong word to use, but we're showing this is what I'm worth and this is what I can do for you. Okay. All righty. So as we start to think about, what you want to do, again, you've got to know the organization. If this is an organization that you have never worked for, please do your research. Are they fiscally sound? Are they growing? And you may think, well, sure, I wouldn't apply for somewhere that's not. Folks, do a little in depth. I will tell you that in the last few years, things change almost overnight. An organization that may be fiscally sound is bought the next day. There's nothing wrong with that. They were fiscally sound, but someone swooped in and bought them. That's going to impact hiring, how many people they're keeping, how they're promoting. And so again, really try to start, shall we say, sourcing out information on organizations that you're interested in and sort of see what's kind of the predictions as best you can tell. And then also just always think even about the performance, the salary review time. Is it done on an annual basis? Is it something you can request? Is it based entirely on performance, on merit, or is it an across the board? I know that sometimes when we're in the educational, the higher ed field, maybe sometimes we haven't even had a salary increase and then they're going to give one. Well, it may just be across the board because they know like, okay, we just need to give everybody the same amount. And then other times it's going to be more performance or merit based. But again, these are things to know about an organization. And even for your position, there could be a position that you negotiate for the salary, but on top of that can be like bonuses. If you make quota, you're going to get this bonus. And so again, that can be a plus, but that can also again be a pressure of, okay, I need that money, so I'm going to have to make my quota or something. So just kind of thinking about all of these things. One thing I want to comment, think about the growth prospects of the company. If they're growing, if things are going well, then there's typically more money to pay you. So keep that in mind. If you're new to an organization, no matter how confident you are, there is going to be a learning curve, and there will be time before you really are starting to make an impact. And so again, I say go in with that positive attitude, what you can do, what you have to offer, but no, you are still learning, and you'll have to kind of, shall we say, get your feet on the ground and then like, okay, now I can really start contributing and showing my value. For someone who may already be working in an organization and you're looking to move up, you want to also think about what you bring. You're already familiar with the organization. You're familiar with the needs of the company. And so you more quickly can take on additional responsibilities and, shall we say, hit the ground running versus, again, that person who may be the new hire and need a little bit more of a learning curve. So again, always think, where are you in these options and how do you use that to your advantage? One thing that I will encourage you as you may go forward and interview positions, and definitely for anyone who may be starting more out in your career path, many companies now are taking a more holistic look at hiring. And that's great because when you're in that meeting, you're interviewing and they're starting to make an offer, you truly can sit there and talk about the salary, but what are the career paths? So like, what are some of the next steps? What would be a progression? And how are the performance reviews linked to salary increases? And so in many cases, when you're having this holistic conversation, you really are getting an idea of how things are laid out, your path with that organization and how you can advance, how you can move up. And also be aware that sometimes when you have that conversation, you may end up realizing there's not as many opportunities for you to move up. Sometimes it's kind of a flat organization. And so again, nothing wrong with that, but better to be aware of that and understand this is going to impact your upward mobility. All right, so skipping on to the next slide. So on this one, we're really going to start getting into like negotiating. And I've got on here, avoid being the first to state a number. I mean, it's always going to be to your advantage if you can hold off kind of discussing salary so that you can really get a clear idea on the position. You hopefully have done your research, so you really do have an idea even going into it, what is the salary range? I've got on here, try to ask what's the typical range for others. You can certainly ask that in an interview, but that may even be a part of your research in advance. Maybe you know some people that work at the company. And please, don't ever just ask someone, what do you make? I mean, no one really wants to talk about the salaries. But if you could even say, like, most people who start there, what's the entry level salary? What is the range? Again, that way they can share information and you're not pinning down what they may be making. But again, you're getting an idea and you kind of know what that range is and how you can interact with it. Again, when I say avoid being the first to state a number, it doesn't always work that way. You can be in an interview and it may get to a point where all of a sudden the interviewer says to you, well, what do you expect to make? And you're thinking, okay, now Mary told me not to be the one to state a number, but they just asked me, what do I expect to make? And you can't really ignore that question. There's some things we'll touch on in a moment of how you can sort of skirt the issue. But you do need to show them that you are aware of what you're worth. And so this is where you always want to try and give a range. I mean, do your research, know the figure. But for example, I might say something like, well, I've been doing some research, checking some statistical data and talking with individuals in a similar position. And I found that the range tends to be from 60 to 70,000. I feel with the experience and the skill sets that I would bring, I would hope to start more in that mid to upper range. You haven't committed yourself to a dollar amount. You've given a range that should be in the ballpark if you've done your research, but you've kind of opened the door of like, this is what I'm expecting. The hope is obviously that you are within their range. Try to be careful that you never go under what the range might be. And again, you noticed how I said with my experiences, and I didn't get involved in my answer right here today, but kind of just laid out for you the concept of, okay, they know that I've researched and I've got this idea. Now let's start talking. Because again, you can have your high and the hope is that you're really going to hit in the middle to the upper part. So again, think about those things. If possible, like it says here, ask what is budgeted for the position. What have you started other individuals at? You can always again say, I've done my research, but I'd like to hear from you so that I know that I'm in line with what I'm thinking. So again, just kind of think about it. Always be aware, though, that if they are in that process of making you an offer, they're interested in you. They want to hire you. And so that right there really is a work to your advantage because they want you. And so the odds are that they will be more able to negotiate with you. So just try to keep these things in mind. Sometimes I'm going to say this is easier said than done. But again, if you think about these things, if you practice how you can respond, you will be ready, you will be prepared. Excuse me. Okay, so let's look at a couple of examples. This one just says, what's your salary requirements? And for example, I'm open at present. I want to know more about the position, the organization. Skipping down, I would prefer discussing this later after we've had a chance to address important questions about the position and how I fit in. This is a nice way of saying, yes, salary is something I want to talk, but I really want to know more about the organization, about my position. It's kind of a flattery also, if you want to say, I know that we all want to make money and we want to get the most we can, but we also need to realize that salary is not always the most important thing. There's a lot of things we need to think about when we're looking at a position and when we're just thinking, what is going to be best for me and what can I bring to them? So again, this is sort of a way to, shall we say, push back a little bit and make them feel good that you're like, wow, I just really want to know more about the organization and the position. And yeah, we'll talk about salary in a minute. So again, kind of think about how you can use this wording. And then going on to another example here, It says, salary is not my first concern. I want to learn again more about the organization, the people I work with, how you will measure my success. And as long as you make a competitive offer, I'm sure we can come to an agreement. Oh man, don't you just wish that we could all just memorize this little answer right here and then just use it? Because it just sounds so just nice, just like, oh yeah, salary, we'll talk about it. But again, this is a way that you can sort of push back and again, get more information and then be ready to kind of come back with what you want to present. And keep in mind that if you're able to say this and you start talking more about the position and what they're looking for, that immediately gives you time to, shall we say, rearrange ideas in your mind. Okay, they just mentioned they really need someone who's organized and can do Excel. Okay, I'm going to come back in a moment with my answer and talk about how I'm known for my organizational skills and how I'm proficient in Excel. So oftentimes in the moment of being there and talking with them, you are actually rearranging some of your thoughts and your answers because you are reacting to what you're hearing and what you're learning. But again, you've still got to have the overall in your mind so that you can make those adaptations in the moment. If you are in a position and wanting to move up or to advance, you can actually just reword this a little bit, kind of to push for the higher pay or upward advancement. Again, you would focus more on taking on the additional responsibilities. Maybe you are going to be supervising someone if that's not a current responsibility. You could be discussing the projects that you have overseen, that you have managed, and maybe how successful they were. Definitely, again, be ready with numbers. And when I say numbers here, I don't necessarily mean the dollars for the salary. I mean talking about how you may have increased retention at your university, how on average students are doing so much better in grades, or just a variety of things, of being able to give those numbers, those percentages, the quantifiers. We talk about quantifiers on resumes, but you want the quantifiers also in your answers, and particularly as you're focusing, again, on what you can bring to the organization. So sometimes things happen and it doesn't go the way we planned. And maybe you gave your range, or even you gave the amount that you wanted, let's say too soon. And you're like, gosh, I am not happy with what I said and kind of what's happening. Here's some options for you. And I can't guarantee that they'll always work, but sometimes you really can. But I just want you to be aware of these. You know, explain that you didn't realize the full responsibilities of the position. It is one thing to look at a job description that's posted somewhere, and then to be able to sit down and talk with the person, and they're now fully talking about all that it will entail. I've had that happen where I'm reading one and thinking, oh, that sounds pretty good. And then I get in like the interview, or I get in a session where I'm learning more, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is way more involved than I thought, or it entailed a certain skill set that I didn't feel as comfortable about. So again, for you, use it to the positive of, oh, now that you fully understand this, you know, let's revisit the salary. And again, you can always come back and mention that you've done more research, cost of living, comparable salaries. You know, could we revisit this conversation? If all else, ask for a review. After 3 months or 6 months. Most reviews are going to come at the 1 year, but notice that I'm pushing it up. 6 months, maybe you're better, but hey, if you think you can do it in 3, but what you're going to need to do in that time period is truly keep track of what you have done, what you have changed, what you've increased. Again, that value that you have brought to the position, to the organization, so that you can show, hey, you're really getting your money's worth, and I need to be making more money. So just kind of think about that and how you can present that in a review. You know, so again, that can be an opportunity to kind of get a salary bump there in that next moment. So a couple of the things to also think about as you move into the negotiation and you're sitting there and you're talking about it. I've got on here, don't get personal. This is something that you always tend to hear. It doesn't mean we all do it, but we tend to hear, oh, females can get so emotional. that's not really true, but I'm just going to go ahead and say it. You've got to leave emotion at the door. You've got to literally, like I say on here, you've got to come in with the facts and you keep it on topic professionally. And let me explain that for a moment. Keeping it on topic professionally is where you are talking about, this is the educational background I have, this is the experience I have, the skill sets I can bring. Again, we talk about maybe those numbers, those percentages. In other words, you are literally laying out everything that is directly related to that position, to that organization. It's not a matter of you're sitting there saying something like, well, I really just need more money because I'm going to have to put my child in daycare and, well, it's just going to cost me more, so I need to make more. No offense. That's not the organization's problem. I mean, I certainly hope they would have a concern, but that's not a reason to give you more money. That's a personal reason. So again, you have got to present this information, and it says rationally. You've got to be rational. You've got to be on target with your information. You've got to have your data. Remember when I talked about creating your brag sheet, and you go back now and you look at that list of what you've done, what you've accomplished? Take a list with you if you need to. I mean, type it up, have it nice in case you need to hand it to them and leave it with them. You can always say, here's a list of my accomplishments if you'd like to look over it later or something like that. But you can refer to it, but you are clearly presenting why you are the person they want to hire or promote, and why this is a reasonable salary that you are requesting, that you are negotiating for. So again, ask for what you think you deserve. Do not be unrealistic, and be prepared to answer questions. And they may be tough questions. They may want you to go back and really talk about a project or talk about an experience, or how you will manage someone if you've never been in a supervisory position, and so you don't have that experience. And like I say here, don't take it personally. You may feel like some of the questions that they are asking you are almost attacking you or attacking your credibility. No, they are really just trying to clearly get to the information and know that if they make this offer, or if they go, shall we say, fight to make this offer for you, that they've got the facts too, and that they're ready to stand behind it. One of the other things is, have in mind, okay, what you want, and I'm going to put it this way, what is your bottom line? And again, be realistic. I used the example a second ago of like 60 to 70, and in your mind, you're thinking, okay, I want the $70,000. Okay, but you're sitting there negotiating, and they may come back and say, well, we can't give you 70, but we'll give you 65. And you're like, oh, well, let's talk some more. Let's look at it. Ideally, it'd be great if you could get the 70, but really, I'm going to say it this way. Your bottom line that you're shooting for may be 67.5. So it's almost like, okay, you've set one thing, they've come, now you're coming down a little and hope they'll come up. And so again, you're not ever saying that to them, but you are trying to kind of work within your range, because oftentimes employers are going to have a counter offer. And so you don't always want to just go, okay, again, you made an offer, they counter offer, you may come back with something else. So really kind of think about how you want to present this. And again, just don't get personal. I mean, be personable about it as you're talking. Don't be defensive and don't be argumentative, but you just can't take it personal. You've got to come in there ready to talk about yourself and what you have to offer and what you can bring to them. So again, I want to kind of focus on, sometimes it happens that you may get a no. So again, have that counter offer. If this is, again, you're already within a position and you get a no, well, how can you improve your performance? What can you do to increase it? And so kind of just think about that. And we're going to talk here in just a moment on some of the non-salary items that you can negotiate for. But one of the key things that I am going to say is make sure that you get all details in writing. If you do work out a certain amount and even some non-salary items, request that to be sent to you in a letter or in an email, an official confirming that this is what they're offering. Or you email to them, my understanding is I start on this date at this amount with these perks, shall we say, and I would like to receive a confirmation. Because again, that gives you validation to yourself and what you have, and you've got something in case anything is ever brought up that you can say, here it is in writing. This is what was confirmed with me. So do just kind of keep those things in mind. Okay, so let's talk about some of the non-salary options. I've got a bunch on this page, and I can certainly send this PowerPoint to Alice afterwards if she wants to share it, but I know you all will have access to the recording, I believe. But I have tried to list everything I could think of that you can negotiate for non-salary. Some of you all may have some other ideas. Obviously, the first bullet there, the vacation, the sick leave, personal leave, childcare, flex time. Flex time and staggered work schedule had always sort of been some minor options. They are going to be much more important going forward. And the telecommuting. We have all learned, you know what? We don't have to be in the office, and we can still do a great job. And so again, think about how these things come into play. To give you an example, there is a person on staff that reports to me. When we were working out our flex time and our work from home, she came up with a plan that she wanted to come in and be at work at 7:30 in the morning. And then she wanted to leave about 1:30 so that she would be home by 2 o'clock. And then she was going to take roughly an hour because her daughter would get home from school. She wanted to make sure to greet her daughter and then get her started on her homework and be available for about an hour. And then she would go back and work the remaining of her hours going past 5 into the evening. So again, still working her hours, but this flexibility. And she clearly explained to me, she presented it, she talked about the hours and how we could touch base, but she also was honest and, I trusted her. I knew she could do it, but this was going to help her because by being home to greet her child, she didn't have to pay for childcare. And so it was a way that she was going to make more money without me giving her a salary increase. It was just having the flex time, the staggered work schedule. So again, realize now, thinking about some of the things I'm going to say that we've learned working from home or working between the two, and how those can come into play and what's important for you. The insurance, the pension, things like that, those can all vary with your organization. Some things you can negotiate for a little bit more. Others are just, shall we say, standard with different organizations. But training opportunities, tuition reimbursement, again, time to take courses. For many of us who may work in a university, tuition can be kind of built in. You can take so many hours that are paid for by the university. You can have time to take the courses. But then I'm also going to turn around and say that in some offices, that isn't as much a possibility. But again, it's something you can ask about, and it's something you can negotiate for. Same thing with bonuses, signing bonuses. Sometimes they're automatically offered, and sometimes you want to ask about it. It might even be like the relocation. If you're going to be moving, that you want to receive like a relocation package that maybe they'll put you up in a hotel for a week. They'll give you, I'm just saying, $5,000 to move your furniture and get situated. Again, every organization can be different in what they will offer and what you can negotiate for. But this is all part of that research that you want to do. Keep in mind that if you're going into a position that you will be provided a car and maybe they're going to pay for the insurance, that's great. I mean, you've just saved purchasing a car. You don't have to pay for the insurance. You may have a gas card. And usually when that's the case, they've given you a little bit of leeway to really use it personally if you're going on vacation or something. And so again, that's not to say they should pay you less, but that is an equivalent of like a bonus of additional pay because you're getting the use of this car. So think about those things. Sometimes it may be, okay, I just want a job title. I would love more money, but I want the recognition. And so you can negotiate for a title. Maybe you want to travel more in your job. Maybe you need things to help you at home. And then this last one, maybe you want to negotiate for more leadership and authority within a job, and this can help alter your career path. And so again, that may not necessarily bring you more money, but it may bring you more recognition. It can open doors for you, and it can help you get to that next job, that next career where maybe the money is substantially higher. So you've got quite a variety of things here to look at. And again, that you can negotiate for. Let me touch for a second on vacation. Working at a university, we are given, in my position, 2 days a month that you accumulate for your annual leave for your vacation. So it's pretty standard. There's not really a negotiation, but be aware, you can negotiate with the person who is your supervisor, your boss. So there could be the flexibility that while they may say the university per se can't give you another week vacation, but that individual may be able to say, yes, I can work with you and we can make sure that you do get that extra time off you want and this and that. Again, get it in writing. So again, you've got flexibility here. One of the other things to think about, maybe you're offered a position and it doesn't have health insurance and you're like, oh my gosh, that's going to cost me. Negotiate and see if they'll pay for you to have COBRA benefits. Maybe they'll pay for all of it. Maybe they'll pay for a portion. But again, that's money that you're not necessarily paying out, and it's something you can negotiate for. And again, I want to stress that more people, as we go forward, will probably continue to work from home. So also think about, what is it you need at home? What do you need to maybe have a better work office or a better environment at home? So again, those can be things that you negotiate for. So just a whole variety of options here. Okay, we're moving towards the end here. So I don't like to talk about it, but let's touch for a second on the mistakes that we may make. Being unreasonable, issuing an ultimatum. I'll tell you right now that if you flat out say something to someone like, well, it's 70,000 or nothing, you forced them into a corner. And even if they want you, they may just be like, you know what, just forget it. This isn't worth it. And all of a sudden you don't have the job. And so again, just think about it. I stressed earlier, I hope you understood that you have got to be prepared with information. What do you have to offer? What can you bring to them? Be direct, not confrontational, not too aggressive, but be direct in your approach. So many times we're wishy-washy. So that's why I've got being indirect, and that's why I'm saying be direct, because you want to make clear what you are stating and what you have to offer. It's kind of one of those typical that we hear so many times. And again, I'm stereotyping, but here goes. Oh, a man may say, I want more money. Whereas I might say, well, I feel like I should get more money, or I think I should. It's like, why am I not saying the same thing? I want more money. So again, be direct about what you want, but have the information to back it up. Don't be worried about upsetting someone. Someone may be upset in the moment that you ask, but then as they're able to evaluate what you've said and what you've said you want and what you're bringing, they can start to see like, okay, this does make sense. And don't set your goals too low. Really think about what can you do, what can you strive for? And again, it says focusing less on what you have to offer. Stress again, creating that brag sheet, knowing what you've got, what you can offer. And then not negotiating for the other options. Just like you saw, there is a whole list of things that you can negotiate for that may not make you feel like your salary is more, but in the long run is really, shall we say, saving you money and giving you more spendable money. So aim high, be realistic, do your homework, cannot stress that, anticipate their needs, know your value, and again, how you can contribute immediately. Companies know that there will be a learning curve in almost any position, but more how quickly you can have impact. That's important, and that'll show them that they made a good decision and that you are well worth what you asked for. And practice. I cannot stress this enough. I've got it on here. You can see it 3 times. It's the only way to get comfortable talking about yourself, the only way to get better. I would encourage you all, whether it's within this organization or you get together with friends, but I would truly practice with someone, and I would even have that individual, shall we say, kind of hardball you a little, push back, ask challenging questions. Maybe when you talk about saying, that I deserve more money or I want more money and this is why, and you mention a project, they may come back and say, well, what did you do in that project? Give me specifics. Again, they're just wanting to clearly understand. And if you've not practiced, you're not going to be ready to come back with that information. It is hard to ask for money. It is hard to ask for, shall we say, more money and more position or upward mobility, but know you're worth it. And again, if you practice, you will feel more comfortable when you are in that moment, when you are doing it. And the very last one says you aren't paid what you're worth, you're paid what you can negotiate. And so again, those are just some things to think about. The last thing I want to share with you is just a couple of resources. The first three are ones that you can use to get ideas on salary, on what people are paid in different positions, different organizations. The bank rate is one that gives you, as it says, the cost of living. And then I've got contact a headhunter on here. You certainly can potentially use a headhunter to help you find a job, but it also is a way oftentimes to get some general information about what's the demand and what's the average salary. And so again, if you're having a little bit of trouble, and particularly in some of the higher up positions, the headhunter can really help you and can actually give you a little bit more financial information than you may have been able to find on your own. So if any of you have questions going forward, I wanted you to have my email here, and then let me click for a minute. Hang on a second. It looks like we had a couple of questions. If you would like me to just send me your email. Okay, so I will make sure that I send this to Alice so that she can pass it on, and she's reminding you to complete the survey. But at this point, if anyone has questions, and I truly welcome them, please feel free to unmute yourself and just ask the question. And if you've got my email, which Alice, I know you can provide it, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. I hope that's all right. And we can see everybody or see everyone to a point. And again, I'm happy to try and answer any of your questions or just address any concerns that you may have.
Mary, thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. I feel inspired. Unfortunately, I work for Tennessee Tech and there's probably no negotiation. But anyway, I'd like to thank you for today's presentation. And before we get into the questions, I just want to remind those on the call to go ahead and email me if you want the slides. And remember that our a website will have the recording on there within the week. In 2 weeks, we'll have another presentation. And then finally, we do have a survey for you to fill out. So it's only 7 questions, so we know what you thought of today's presentation. We have 7 minutes, and at 7 minutes, we'll invite everybody to go ahead and leave because you may be on your lunch hour. And then we'll leave Mary here in case she wants to continue a conversation. But I would like to just open it up to questions at this time.
Do you want me to go ahead and stop recording?
Well, I hadn't thought about that. But yeah, we can go ahead and continue until 12:30.
Okay.
Okay.
Any questions?
Well, wait a minute. I have thought. Patricia's our HR professional on here. We might want to stop the recording in case somebody wants to ask something personal that we wouldn't want to put out on the web.
All right, so I'm going to stop the recording.
Okay.